Welcome to Please Me, the podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sexual education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap one empowering conversation at a time. Last week, I interviewed Danielle Bezalel for my incredible Christmas special. Danielle is the brilliant mind behind the Rom-Com Bomb podcast and Sex Ed with DB, a feminist multimedia platform dedicated to providing the sex education you never got. We had an absolute blast diving into a fun role play about masturbation, and trust me, you don't want to miss this episode. As we wrap up the year, I want to wish all my listeners a happy new year full of abundance, love, pleasure, and of course, big clit energy. Tune in now for an empowering and enlightening conversation to kick off 2025. Please Me is for mature audiences. Sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
This is like reframing our energy and our mindset. So I just want you to recognize when you do that, say cancel, and then call in that big clit energy to be able to then have that conversation. Start operating off of new energy versus that old fear-based program that happens when we're very young.
Welcome to Please Me, the podcast that destigmatizes conversations about sex and sexual health. Today, I am so excited to welcome Brittney Carmichael to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so stoked to be here.
Yes, this is going to be a really fun conversation. Brittney is known on Instagram as The World by Brit, and I follow her, and she has an amazing following and such amazing energy. She hosts luxury goddess retreats and is an intuitive, and she does coaching and has many different talents that she pulls into her coaching sessions, including Tira and her beauty. She's at the top of her game in terms of the beauty industry, and she, I'm sure, pulls in that information. She also is very spiritual and has a practice all around empowering women in their spirituality. So I want to welcome you to the show, Brittney, and this is our New Year's Eve episode. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you so much for having me, Eve. I knew that we were going to hit it off as soon as I walked into the room at Podcast Movement and saw your shirt that said BCE on it. I was like, we are friends. Let's take a photo. I need to know your name. And it's been so cool getting to see all the magic that you make and supporting women and having these beautiful conversations around, honestly, what is keeping us beautiful and healthy and vibrant and spiritual.
Absolutely. And when you are the whole package, that's when you can really find true joy and happiness. And that's what this journey is all about, is really trying to help women and empower women to find that joy and happiness. And I, do it in a different way because my focus is more on sexual health and on pleasure and bringing women the pleasure that they deserve. And you do it in other ways, but I know that we definitely intersect in a lot of ways, right? So I want to just talk about first of all, I want to talk about the amazing luxury goddess retreats that you do, because I find them to be so amazing and definitely want to participate in one of those in the maybe upcoming year, the next couple of years. So tell us a little bit about those retreats and what you do during those retreats.
Yeah, thank you so much. The goddess retreats really were born after a need that I was seeing in our community, that women kept saying, I feel alone. And after working behind the chair for 20 years, I have heard the same story over and over again from all walks of life, all types of women, and they feel like nobody really gets them. They don't really have that community that they can plug into. I seem to attract the high vibing, unique, authentic, beat to your own drum kind of sparkly beings. And I'm so grateful to walk that authentic line in my own life. And because of that, it's attracted women into my life that are powerful and amazing and magical, but they doubt themselves. They question that big vision or dream that their soul is nudging them towards. And it's really, over the last 2 decades, shown me that we are so powerful if we just have that supportive community around us that believes in us. And about 10 years ago, I started bringing our community together with my local goddess gatherings. Every full moon and new moon, I'd call out for the weirdos, the woo-woos, and the women who are looking for that sisterhood connection. And the events grew over the years and got bigger and more intimate. And what I noticed is what happens when community comes together and they have an open heart and they have an open mind and they are looking for that growth and transformation, and they are intuitive and they have this weird soul mission that they have like this purpose or this calling and they're not exactly sure what it is. And I've seen this over the years. And what I know to be true is that when you spend that time together and that energy, like literal transformation happens, not only through people's confidence and self worth, but also in your business or your ability to reclaim your power and heal past trauma and bullshit that you need to forgive so that you have enough courage to leave that narcissistic partnership or start that new business. And after doing these gatherings for years, I started thinking to myself, I love luxury travel. So what if like we did what we do at these gatherings, but for longer in beautiful, luxurious places that are in sacred places on the planet? And so I made a courageous leap in my own business to step out from behind the chair and start this women empowerment movement. And I told my husband, we're either going to have a really badass vacation, just the two of us in a really ridiculous, oversized house that is insane, or we are going to have our very first retreat and we're going to host this experience for women to be able to heal, grow, connect, play, and just step away from the busyness of everyday life. And we sold it out and we've been doing it for about 5 years now. And it's been the most incredible thing to be able to witness and hold space for. So that just gives you the backstory of like, why am I another girl hosting more retreats? Because they seem to be popping up all the time. But this really was a soul mission and a soul calling as a need to fulfill for women who are overworked and honestly over it all and just need that space to get away and recharge amongst other CEOs, stay-at-home moms, like powerful, light-working babes who are doing the most for the world. And we need that space for us as healers and leaders and light workers and teachers and those who are of influence and impact in the world. Those people need a place to recharge, to heal, grow, and connect with other badass babes out there. And so I felt like that was the need that I was missing. So I just created it. And that's how the Goddess Retreat was born.
I love that. And I could see like a growth in my own personal journey as well. I've had this podcast for about a little over a year and have developed, thank you, and have developed the concept of Big Clit Energy or BCE, which is the t-shirt that you saw me wearing and what really drew us together. And so in the new year, I'm going to be creating a course around how to get Big Clit Energy. And you talk about confidence, and that's really what it's all about, is the confidence that you have in your sexuality that really translates to all areas of your life. Just like you said, it translates to your business, it translates to your relationships, all of those things. When you have confidence in yourself, it really translates to all areas of your life. And so I love to empower women around their sexual confidence. And so I think that we are like this. We go hand in hand with what we're doing. And so I so appreciate what you do. And who doesn't love a luxury retreat? You know, when you go away, you want to get away from the busyness of your life and going to a place where you know you're going to be really treated as a goddess. And we should feel that way about ourselves because we are that. And so I want to bridge the gap here between our physical world and our spiritual world. And how do we bring that together? Because I know you are a very spiritual person.
Yeah, there's a reason why we include a vibrator in every Goddess Retreat welcome bag, because that sexual pleasure and empowerment of the holistic, like the whole being, is absolutely important to how you show up and shine. And I would love to go on down the rabbit hole on why I think orgasms are so important for women and how it's our healing energy, and just like how it started for me was feeling like I was an absolute psycho during my PMS experience. That I'm like, what is going on with me? My husband told me you're only good like 1 week out of the month. Like, what is going on? And that sent me on this journey of figuring out our hormone cycle. And that there's times where we need to rest and honor our body. And there's times where we have all this extra energy and lay down, I'm about to crawl on top of you and rip your clothes off kind of energy. And so when I started realizing as a Libra who loves balance, that things are constantly changing and emotion, that really just sent me on this wild journey of inward self-discovery that sent me on that spiritual path that you mentioned. It started with the physical of how do I look good? And I'm going to be a hairstylist. And if I hate myself, then at least I can make my hair pretty. That only worked for so far. So then I started realizing, why am I not happy? Why do I not have joy? What is missing in my life? And so that also sent me on that journey of spiritual self discovery of what is blocking me from feeling good when on paper I feel like I have everything that I love or that I need. There was just that disconnect from that internal appreciation, really, is what it was. So when we talk about goddess retreats, sexuality, spirituality, all of it stemmed from me starting to understand, why do I not love myself? Why am I so mean to myself? Why am I so critical and judgmental? And why am I so angry more than anything? Where did this come from? And lucky for me, I married a hypnotist. So I asked for help. My mom had a stroke that paralyzed her in 2012. She was also a hairstylist. So I thought, shit, I am on a bad track if I'm following in the same footsteps as my mom. And I have to do something to basically save myself at this time. And so my mom's stroke that paralyzed her, where she could no longer talk anymore, really was a wake up call for me in 2012 to start looking inward for answers of like, why am I not happy? No one else can give this to me. No amount of money or job or status or whatever seems to only last for a minute. So like, where's that lasting joy? And I'm so grateful to my mom and that experience, which she's now can walk and talk. And she's a little slow around the full moons, which is really interesting, but she is a true miracle that I've had the pleasure of witnessing in my life. And that was enough to make me say, if mom has to go through this massive change and transformation in her life, which is why I'm this like empowerment transformation healer, if you will, because I held that space for my mom, for her to relearn and reclaim that power. And the real truth behind all of that is the stroke knocked her out because she said she was married to a narcissist, wanted out, but didn't know a better way. She said everybody needed something from me. And that was just my way of shutting my body down. Not that she was like, I think I'm going to have a stroke today. The energy that's out of alignment can create that dis-ease. And so my mom really is the biggest inspiration for my spiritual awakening, my spiritual journey, and me having a wake up call that wasn't necessarily my own, to go, holy shit, like things need to change right now. And that is where I started asking for help. And that led me down the woo woo rabbit hole, girl. I got crystals coming out my bra. I've got crystal dildos. It's been a interesting, beautiful, amazing journey, but all of it is to face our shadows and really get comfortable with that fear that we have inside of us, or the anger, or the lack of self-worth. We have to just confront that and start asking hard questions like, what the hell? Why do I feel this way? Where does this come from? And are we ready to make a decision to let that go? And all of that work has led me to reclaim my power and step into my purpose. And that actions speak louder than words. I never asked to be an influencer or this. I thought I was just going to be a hairdresser. And people started seeing that change and transformation through me. And that's what led me to step out from behind the chair and start an online course, community, program, membership, podcast, like you name it, on the things of internet things to do. My husband and I did that because we're like, we have a message and we want to share this with the world, to reclaim your power and love yourself. And it actually really can be easy. You've gone through the hard stuff. Like, I want to show you tools and techniques that make it more fun and a playful approach to making friends with that inner mean girl and learning to love yourself.
I love that. And I love the experience that you had with your mom going through a stroke. That sort of was a wake up call for you to say, wait a minute now, if this is the genetics that I've been given, right? What can I do to change my life so that I don't go down that same path? And I often talk about nutrition and how important that is for our health. Nutrition is 70% of our health, right? And so looking at our nutrition so that we don't fall prey to those diseases is so important. And I won't go into all of the details because we're not talking about nutrition today. We're going to talk about pussy power. but definitely so important when you're dealt with something like an experience like that, where you have to be the caregiver of someone that you are so close to and also look up to so much, and helping her through that helped you to see more tunnel vision what your journey should be so that you could live a happy life yourself. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are caregivers to their parents who are sick, and we often worry. And I remember my dad saying that he didn't know if he would get past the age that both of his parents died, because they died a little bit young. And so that was like always a worry in his mind. And I think that is a totally valid concern. But I'm going to say here that genetics is important. Absolutely, it's important, right? And it's important to know your genetics. And they will always ask that when you go to the doctor's office, who in your family had cancer, who in your family had heart disease, who in your family has high blood pressure, diabetes, etc. And it's important to know those things, but also know that genetics is only 15% of our health, only 15%. So yes, it's important, but also the other part is important too. And that is how you live your life, how you choose to, the environment that you choose to put yourself in, the people
Your
that you
belief
surround
system.
yourself with.
Mhm.
System. They often say, that you're like the five people that you most hang out with are the people that are most influential to you, and those are the people that you're going to be most like, right? So choosing
Mhm.
your friends wisely and surrounding yourself with tons of amazing people like you do on your goddess retreat so that they can make connections and really truly uplift each other. And so I love this example. I appreciate that you brought it up, and I want to go and delve even deeper into the woo aspect of your healing and talk about how you connected with divine feminine and your pussy power. I'm here with my must haves for the holidays. If you're looking for gifts that never go out of style, look no further. Or treat yourself to these incredible products that I can't live without. Parlor Game's estrogen and progesterone topical creams will keep your libido revving and your lady that's happy. I love the Silky Peach Cream and Vibrant Third for keeping my hormones in balance. Maybe you want to give the gift of health. Get the latest in stem cell technology, pain relief, and inflammation reduction from LifeWave. After COVID, I gave up wearing a bra, and I have found the best solution to having that seamless look without the discomfort of a bra. Cakes are non-adhesive pads that naturally adhere to your skin and always look flawless. They make such a great gift too. I never start my day without taking my Juice Plus chewables. They come in capsules too and are a great way to get the nutrition of 30 fruits and veggies into your diet easy. Don't forget the omegas for brain health and heart health. I never start my day without a Juice Plus shake. With the glycemic index of broccoli and great plant-based protein, they are perfect when you are on the go. Every day, I check on my tower garden and harvest a bowl of greens for lunch. The aeroponic garden is the ultimate in grow-at-home technology and helps me get my veggies in daily for tower to plate eating. Maybe you're wondering, what about my intimate time, Eve? Don't forget that I love Bonnie's Herbals and her sex butter and boudoir butter. And of course, everyone loves toys for the holidays. Get your sexy toys now at pleaseme.online. Happy, healthy, and sexy holidays.
It's so funny because when you said we're here to talk about pussy power, it just made me laugh so much internally because my father-in-law actually deleted me from his Facebook because he told my husband, I can't be friends with your wife if she's constantly posting things about pussy power. So the fact that you're here with a podcast and we're talking about pleasure and pussy power, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for creating that safe space to have these conversations because it's all happening. And a lot of my sexual trauma is because my mom wouldn't talk to me about it because her mom was weird about it. And so there was that disconnect in conversation where I didn't get to learn, but yet I was very curious from a young age of exploring my own body and figuring out pleasure. And it's really interesting how the way that we're raised or the way that we aren't able to express ourselves, because if you have ever, this is the most fascinating thing to me in doing chakra work. If you look at our sacral chakra, where our feminine power is, and the pussy power and the pleasure and the creativity, and then you also look at the throat chakra, which is the opposite color on the color wheel. So they balance each other out, being able to express, speak up, have courage, say no when you don't want their dick inside of you and fucking mean it with boundaries. Like a lot of all of this, is so connected because when you cut the larynx and the vagina in like from a topical view, it's the exact same shape. It's the same pipe. It's the same connection. And so when I think about the energetics and the beliefs and all of that, it isn't just the genetics, but it's what we've learned. And I think having these conversations around sexuality is so important for our own divine feminine power. And if we want to reclaim that, pleasure is absolutely in the top three list of divine feminine is creativity, pleasure, and intuition. And so in my book, that's how I would describe when I'm in my feminine, I am acting from a place of surrendered trust and faith. I am expressing without blocking my creativity and spirit coming through me. And just that higher divine connection, knowing that my intuition is always guiding me and that I can live in a state of trust. And we've been brought up in a masculine culture where we're hustling and trying to rip down all the doors and just keep going if it doesn't fit. And I think that stems from not being able to have open and honest conversations about what it is to be feminine, and how sitting back, relaxing, and receiving is actually how we step into our power.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you include the intuition, because as children, we are taught to throw that intuition out the window and to not connect with it. And even I had another episode about dreams and how I remember as a child and even as a mom saying to my daughters when they come to my room and say, I had a bad dream. And I would say, it's just a dream, go back to bed. No, this is your mind is telling you something, right? How do you connect to that intuition and that intuitiveness inside of you? And so I love that you include that as well, because it's so important for us to really pay attention to that. And in the busy world that we live in, oftentimes we are overlooking these natural, intuitive messages that our body is telling us. And our body is going to tell us, just like with your mom, she was holding it all in and eventually developed this disease. And so it will manifest in one way or another. And so before it manifests in something very dangerous like that, how can we really get in touch with our intuitive powers? Do you want to jump into that a little bit?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful, I love where this conversation's going. And because my mom was bleeding for 6 months vaginally and she ignored it. It's fine. It's fine. No, mom, that's your body's way of trying to let some shit go. And then when she went in for that hysterectomy, finally, after asking for help, she had a clot that threw her body through a clot because she'd been bleeding for 6 months and had a stroke on the table during that operation. And so it, her body was fucking screaming at her, babe. And so what I realized in looking at what happened with my mom and looking at my own life and my own #MeToo sexual abuse trauma from childhood, I realized that if you've gone through something like that, you disconnect yourself from your body. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel discomfort. I don't even want to feel the intuition, the emotions, none of it. And so what I see happening is so many of us women cut off the feeling to the body. So we don't eat when we numb ourselves, whether that's through food or through mindset or through whatever means you can do to turn it off. I feel like that is what we're having to overcome, is that disconnection between mind, body, and spirit. That's holistic healing, right? When all of the parts are working in harmony. And I think that it starts with getting back in touch with our physical body. And one of the techniques that really helped me overcome a lot of my own trauma and my own hang up and shame, because it was very sexual at a very young age. I remember rubbing my nipples as a really young kid watching cartoons, and mom's, don't do that. Don't do that in public. But it feels good. Like, why would we stop doing it if it does? Like, it feels fucking good. Like, why would we not? And so I've felt that shame since really young childhood. I was very sexual and active growing up. And so for me, I've had to overcome a lot of that Christian shame that I grew up with my father as a preacher and telling me not to do the terrible things, yet like we're advertised through sex and this and that. So there's just disconnect in our culture and disconnect in our own relationship to our body. And one of the most healing tools that I've used, and maybe I would assume you have this in your practice, but is de-armoring, where you go and explore and do an internal yoni massage to find where you're holding some of that trapped pain or trapped trauma. And then doing that experience with my partner and having him help in that, because he's the one I'm having to deal with my own shame and weird body image issues and all the things. He is getting the negative side effects of that. And if I can bring him into the healing, and that's ultimately what's led us to create the Evolved Couples Retreat, is being able to heal and grow with your partner. So I think that if you can do it for yourself, that's the most important. But if you can do it for yourself and include your partner, to me, that's just like a bonus. And if you can bring a partner along that would be willing to be open to that healing, you found yourself a gem. So I'm just so lucky that my husband is open to helping me heal and grow in all kinds of ways. I'm sure that's something you've explored, right?
I actually have spoken to Leslie Draffin. She's actually right here on my wall, but she was a guest on my show, and she talked about womb healing. And I personally have never done any womb healing. When
Okay.
she described it on the show, we talked about it during that episode. I was like, oh my God, if I did that, it would be like a freaking poltergeist down there. I feel like there's so much trauma trapped inside of me that I
Mhm.
definitely feel like it's something that I do need to explore on my own. And you're absolutely right. If you have a partner that's willing to help you along that way, I think that would be another layer of healing for you as a couple as well. Because, of course, if you have trapped up energy inside of you that's negative, and it's going to affect your sexuality regardless, whether you have a good sex life or not, it can only get better. Definitely, I love the concept of this, and it's something that is on my bucket list for 2025. I definitely want to do some womb healing on myself and also some ayahuasca, which also I have heard has really opened people up to even more layers of healing. And for me, I did a lot of healing in my 20s. I was in therapy and I was part of a group called SIA, which stands for Survivors of Incest Anonymous. And I had a group of friends that I met with every single week. And we like worked the program together for over a year and a half. So I did a lot of work early on to heal from my sexual abuse, which I think is key if you want to have a healthy sex life. If you have any sexual abuse in your past or any abuse or trauma in general, it really inhibits you from being your true full potential in terms of your sexuality. So, really focusing on healing that is so important. So, I appreciate that you brought that up for yourself.
Yeah. And I truly agree with what you just said because I was with my partner. I've been with him for 18 years. And in the first couple of years of our relationship, the sex was like insane, amazing, delicious, perfect, mind blowing, all the things. And he taught me about Tantra and Ipslu. And we like studied all this stuff. And it was so amazing. And then there was this period in my mid 20s where I was like, something's wrong with me. I'm dry. I'm not turned on. I don't know what's going on. And then one day we were about to have sex and I just started bawling and I said, I feel like a whore. And he said, are you cheating on me? I was like, no, I'm not. I just feel, I don't know, like all the things that were labeled in high school and this and that. And also a sibling hashtag Me Too situation. So feel you on that. So it was just like all that trauma just came out at once. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I feel terrible and it's awful. And he just sat with me and he's, babe, we're good. You're good. And that's what led us on that journey of maybe there's something deeper here that we need to look into that is blocking me from being able to express myself and also connect with myself. And so I am so grateful for that moment of just like sitting on the bed, crying, ugly crying while I'm naked. Like I just feel all my childhood traumas are coming out at once. And we were years into our relationship. We had sex so many times. So the fact that it decided it needed to come out at that time, I don't know where the moon was or what was in retrograde, but my God, it all came out. As you say that, it makes me think back to the time where, yeah, it will show up. It'll rear its ugly head in probably a time you don't expect. And so if you know that you've experienced something like that, actively pursuing the healing is much easier than what you've gone through. So the hard part is already over. So I talk a lot about trauma informed and all of that, but what you imagine and what you actually experience, your subconscious doesn't know the difference. And so a lot of times when we start to picture and imagine repeating ourselves over and over again, puts us back in that same body fight or flight experience. And so I think being able to have the tools to regulate yourself and to be able to have that sacred space held for you while you're consciously deciding I'm going to face this shadow is a really powerful thing. And I think that's what's necessary for all of us to be able to move through the collective pain body that us feminine energy have collected.
Yes. And, the societal norm that you said you felt like a whore, right? That's, society saying that you're not supposed to be overly quote unquote promiscuous and, all of the purity culture that is really so detrimental to us as women. So I appreciate that, brought that up because, a lot of times we put this shame on ourselves that doesn't need to be there. We are sexual beings from the time that we are born. And there is nothing wrong with sexuality. There is no shame in sexuality. There is no shame in sexual health. There's no shame in having a sexual health condition. There is no shame in, even though it happens to you, right? And you've experienced sexual trauma, there's no shame around that either. You know what I mean? We may internalize shame, but really the person who should be ashamed is the person who perpetrated that on you and not us, the victims, right? And we end up internalizing that shame. So really releasing that shame is really so important. And I think that you bringing up that experience with your husband, who you had already been with for so long, the reason probably why it never came up before was because you didn't have the safe space in order to let it come out. And when you did have that safe space, it just all flowed. And the fact that you had somebody on the other side that was like, hey, let's look at this, do some healing around it. Let's try and see where this is coming from so that we can really experience our true sexual joy and in all areas, because there are layers to that too. And so I'm sure that after all of that healing, you are even on a higher like vibration in terms of your connection with your partner. Would you say that?
Absolutely, because a lot of my mindset around sex changed because for so long I felt like my husband only wants to have sex so he feels good. And what I learned in a lot of the conversations we had around that was how much he was invested in my pleasure and wanting to make sure I was good and I was taken care of. And so it really just changed the dynamic where I used to think men ruled us with sex or used us for sex. I always felt used. I realized in going through a lot of that healing and expressing like why I feel this way, I learned that actually he's there to support me and to love me and to be intimate and make sure that I'm taken care of. And I never ever looked at sex like that before. I always thought it was like, I'm going to fuck you so that you like me. And that is not a healthy approach to sex. So I would say, of course, it made it deeper, but a lot of it was not just a physical thing, it's a mindset thing. And I think that's women. My wise old mom says, if my head, heart, and puss don't align, then it's not happening. So I think that me getting my head on straight to realize that this could actually be a tool for connection, for intimacy, for healing, and for manifestation. Hello, sex magic. Then I realized that there's a whole new world and potential to be able to use this sacred experience, not just to make him like me.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the times women experience that mindset where they're like, oh, my boyfriend really wants to do this. Should I do this or should I not do this? I know that maybe if I do this, he'll like me, right? That is never the reason to have sex. It's because you want to do it yourself. And I think a lot of people experience this and in marriages too. And consent in marriages is so key because we have to consent even when we are married. Just because you're married doesn't mean that whenever your husband wants sex, you need to lay down and open your legs. That is not the case. You have to be consenting to that intimate time and be ready for it and open to it as well. So I love that you brought that up. And so we can go off on another tangent of pussy magic right now and all of that, but I want to jump into our role play section. So we chatted a little bit about how we're going to do that. So I'm going to be coming to you as a client. You're going to be my coach and action.
Usually when I'm working with women who are going through transformation, it's always nice to know like where you're getting started or what is that current struggle that you're going through. So if we're talking about reclaiming our feminine power, where do you feel like you're holding yourself back in showing up for yourself, speaking your truth or walking your talk?
I think that for me, I am pretty able to communicate with my partner what I want and need. I think that it shows up in other aspects of our relationship where I have a hard time communicating about difficult things, and my inner child sort of comes out and starts. And sometimes I say, I must have more than one personality. And my partner always says, yeah, you do. Because I start talking in my like inner child voice, right? And very like immature. And anytime that I think that there's going to be like some kind of difficult conversation, or maybe he's not going to respond back the way that I want, and I get nervous. So I start to do that. And I really want to not do that anymore. I want to be my true, authentic adult self with him at all times. And so I would love some direction with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you think about the high pitched voices as you get older, adults carry that like inner child talk. I've learned that a lot of women speak in those childish voices because they're emotionally damaged in their maturity. And so it makes me think back to, where did you feel like your love was going to be taken away from a parent when you were a child? And that's what it seems like you're maybe reverting back to. And so when it comes to you being dominant and able to communicate yourself in the bedroom, but maybe backing down in other areas of your life or your emotional well being, I would like you to think about like an anchor word when you're in the bedroom and you feel powerful and confident and you can speak your truth and tell them to bend the fuck over and don't put it there. You know what I mean? Like, what could you give me like an anchor word that's, I feel powerful, I feel divine, sovereign, sexual? Like, what's a word that comes to mind that would describe that level of energy and empowerment?
I would say that I was in my big clit energy, feeling fully
Okay.
sexy.
Yes. So I want you to think about, like I said earlier, you know how the mind doesn't know the difference between what you imagine and what's actually happening in reality? You're just operating off an old program where you go into that fight or flight when that fear pops up of, oh my gosh, someone might take their love away from me, or that fear. You automatically go into this old routine. So the way that we're going to break that cycle, some people use post-it notes to break their like diet cycles or eating habits or whatever. But for me, I just like trigger words so that when I start to feel like my emotions are going crazy and I'm about to cut a bitch, like I remember that I'm this like peaceful spiritual teacher and I can't go into bitchney mode like that all the time. And so I have like trigger words to bring my energy back and to be able to control ourselves. And so in the opposite direction, instead of trying to like control all this energy, we need to build your energy up. So I want you to think about how you feel when you're in the bedroom and when you go to have those conversations in other areas of your life where you feel like a little less than or not as confident. I want you to think of that trigger word, like big clit energy, like speak that affirmation to yourself, cultivate that energy in your mind before you're about to have that conversation. Maybe close down your eyes and imagine like you in your power being able to express yourself and take that same energy and momentum into the conversation that you're going to have with your partner. If you hear yourself starting to do the child voice or play, like back up and play timid, just you have to say to yourself, like, awareness is the key to change. For me, I always say stop or cancel. So just start to recognize when you move into that, because you're not going to get it perfect the next time you do this, right? This doesn't happen just overnight.
Right.
So I think it's important for you to recognize when you're doing it, like, oop, doing the childlike energy, stop, cancel, not going to do that. Big clit energy, like, whips and chains, motherfucker. This is how I really feel. You know what I'm saying? So I want you to just shift. This is like reframing our energy and our mindset. So I just want you to recognize when you do that, say cancel, and then call in that big clit energy to be able to then have that conversation. Start operating off of new energy versus that old fear based program that happens when we're very young.
I love that. And scene. That was great. And I absolutely agree. But it takes awareness, right? Because sometimes you don't even realize that you're going into that mode. And then after a little bit of conversation, you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? What's going on here? So awareness is number one. And then the mind shift. So great tips. And I will be working on that in 2025.
That's how I met you. So I can only see you in that light of having big clit energy through and through. So I am going to hold that tone for you so that you can just step fully into your power and be able to have those conversations, to be able to take that pussy power and move it through the solar plexus, which is our willpower and our ability to put it out into the world. And then moving through the heart chakra, this energy has a ways to flow through. So that energy has to be strong, right? And so our heart chakra, that's our ability to love, to have compassion, to connect with the world. And then we get to our throat where we express and communicate our creativity, our sensual ideas, like all of our feelings and emotions. So that energy has to be strong because it has to move through other centers and gather that strength to be able to get it out into the world. So that bridge that you're crossing is a very big one, and it takes a lot of courage and willpower, but it can be done. And it just as easy as it is to say, I'm not confident. Like, I can't tell you how many women that I coach sit across from me just like this. And they're like, oh, I am not confident. I'm like, you just said that so confidently though. Like, or are you not? I'm just not sure. It's just about getting on your own team and believing in yourself. So I want you to believe in yourself when you have that big clit energy through and through your entire life. It really is just knowing that you are lovable. That's the biggest fear. All of our fears of public speaking and fears of this and fears of that, it all boils down to the one same fear. And that is the fear of being unlovable. So when you fully love yourself and you own that authentic truth, then nobody's energy, love, whatever outside of yourself can alter that big clit energy. And that to me, I think is the definition of I don't need yours because I've got my own.
I love that. And on that note, I'm going to say this is our New Year's episode. So that will be a hashtag 2025 goal for me, definitely. And I love how you broke it down into the different chakras and how all of that plays into communication at the very end and really putting it out into the world. So that was really a beautiful way to describe how we can manifest a better life for ourselves. So I want to make sure that my listeners can find you. Where can we find you?
Yeah, I love hanging out on Instagram at The World by Brit with 1T. That is my favorite go-to. Slide into my DMs, ask me crazy questions, hit me with what your biggest inspiration or takeaway was from today. But you can also find out all of my other information, like my retreats, my coaching, my mediumship and tarot reading, and all the fun, magical things that we do to create the sparkle magic in the world at BrittneyCarmichael.com. This has been such an epic conversation. I knew as soon as I walked into that party room and saw you that you were my girl, and this conversation has only proven that to be true. So thank you so much for what you do. It's been such a pleasure to get to connect and share some of the passion that I have for lighting women up from the inside out. And with a good old zzz on the outside too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we need that little sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with that. And with that being said, you can go to pleaseme.online because I have a whole store of those fun little toys that you can access there. Lots of really fun things. And Brittney, I know when I met you, I knew we were going to be soul sisters for life. So I'm so glad that we actually got to connect on the show. And I know that this is just the very beginning of a relationship that we will have for many years to come. So thank you so much again for being on the show. If you like this episode as much as I loved recording it, please grab your phone right now and take that and share it with somebody. Share it with somebody that you know and love, a friend, a family member, whoever that may be. Share it with your whole girlfriend group or whatever, because this is how podcasts grow and this is how we can share what we do with the world. So thank you again for being out there and listening. Happy New Year. And till next, for ad-free listening, exclusive bonus episodes, Eve's library of archived webinars, and early access to new releases of Please Me, become a monthly supporter on Patreon. Simply open the Patreon app on your phone, search for Please Me, and subscribe today for premium content and more. Cheers to finding your pleasure and big clit energy.